It's time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnet Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
Welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with my co-host
Barnet Bain. It's very nice to be here with you
back
this
in
week.
the saddle
God,
again.
It's always so good. I just love being in this studio with you, with Spence, who's looking more buffed out every week, and
He's a handsome lad.
He can move muscles that I don't even know. He can move things I don't even know I have.
Yeah, well, you probably don't have them. That's why you can't move them.
That's true, but I know where they are now because we have Spence to point them out.
Yeah.
So it is. It's been an interesting and full week. A very, very full week. Take a breath and lose the scattered, frantic energy. Let me ask you a little bit.
I love that, what you just said. That just the awareness of the energy and the shift. That's nice.
Well, the ability to calibrate it and shift it.
Well, the observer to even know what's going on.
I have to say that it's taken many, many years for me to develop the ability to relate to it, to observe it and relate to it rather than just be lost in it. But it's a work in progress. To wit, an example. I just happen to have an example. So a buddy of mine, you know Stuart. Stuart Emery is working on a book called Who's in My Room? And it has to do with being discerning about what you get involved with and managing calendars and schedules and people and overwhelm and overload. And so he very kindly asked me if I would contribute a chapter to this book.
Oh, beautiful.
And I said yes before I realized, wait a second, I now added to my overload.
Yeah, what part of me was making the choice?
Mismanaged and exactly. I've mismanaged my time. I've now upped my overwhelm and my overload, and it's a very curious paradox.
Well, maybe he'll let you read the book after you're done, so that you can figure this
so
one
I
out.
can listen. And maybe take my advice. I'm not using it.
That's right.
So I'm very curious about that. So there are two kinds of doormen, of figurative doormen. There's the doorman that Stuart posits, who is the one that we generate for ourselves a figure. We call it a doorman, and he or she looks out to see that we don't over-admit or over-commit, because anybody that we allow into that room, we make the assumption that they're in there forever. So you really want to be very selective about who you allow in, and so that you don't inundate yourself. But I'm aware, and we've talked about this for a long, long time. We also have a bunch of people in the room who are already in my room.
Yeah.
There are all the past versions of myself. When I fall out of the present and into any one of my various pasts, all of whom are dealing with life at their own developmental levels, they kind of take over, and they all have very strong and forceful opinions, and they're all shrieking at once, and that's it shows up as the frenzy. So we have to have a doorman for calendars and people and calls, but you also have to have a doorman with the chops to be able to see what part of me from the inside out is showing up.
And my sense is, because these are all threads of possibility. Many are old. We've rerun them many times, and we know the dance, as it were. We're doing a jig. Oh, yeah, the jig. I know this. That frantic one, the one you referred to in the very beginning. A little like a jig.
The frantic jig we do for love, without remembering we're loved all along.
But also where it's going, because there's these are frequencies that take us into certain realms, that there's a sense of what we're generating in these choices, because I think it's a combination. We've said many times that there's a sense of vision of a possibility that we're pursuing, a scent that we're following, and being able to observe and calibrate and choose these scents or frequencies that will take us into maybe richer domains. I mean, domains fertile.
From possibilities, a menu of possibilities, calibrate, tune into probabilities.
Yes. Well said.
Well, I want to take this moment to tune into the probability that we can have our guest weigh in with enormous contributions to this conversation. We have with us...
buckle up, folks. We're officially leaving terra firma.
Yes, here we go.
Stay buckled up, too, because down the rabbit hole it might get bumpy.
We're either blasting off to outer space or blasting into inner space.
Either.
But blasting we are. So, and we have with us the commander-in-chief of the blast-off vehicle.
That's right.
Our dear friend, Darryl Anka. Darryl is known to very, very many, and to listeners of this show as a director, film director. His new movie, Dearly Departed, available, I think, any minute now. No, actually already available on DVD.
Well, we'll find out more when we get him on.
We'll discuss more about that. And writer, and also he is a metaphysical teacher and a channel for an old friend of mine and many of you called Bashar. So we are really, really glad to welcome Darryl back to Cutting Edge Consciousness this morning.
Hey, Darryl.
Good morning, guys. I am very happy to be here. Thank you for having me back.
Well, we love you, and we love that beautiful FM voice of yours.
Fantastic
So
voice.
it's something for us to aspire to here on the AM dial.
Right, we're moving up.
You make us look good. We're going to move up.
All you have to do to get this is stay up late and then get up early.
That's right. It's a good thing. I stopped smoking and I stopped drinking, and my voice went up like a choir boy. So... Darryl, what have you to add to the doorman piece, the outer doorman as well, even possibly even more critically, the inner doorman?
Well, I think that synchronicity has a lot to do with it. I find in my life when I do my best to operate on a level, on a frequency, or stay in a state of being, that, at least as far as my outer doorman is concerned, represents, my highest passion, my true self, then I find that frequency allows the inner doorman, so to speak, to let out whatever it is I need to look at, whoever it is I need to look at that particular moment, to integrate, to deal with, to work with. So I think the outer and inner doorman work best together. The door swings both ways, so to speak, the best, when I make sure I stay in that frequency that represents my passion, my excitement, my true self.
I love the language, my relationship with synchronicity. You know, that there's a pattern. These, again, we're talking with I was saying to Barnett, these threads of possibility, and what the offer is in them, what they carry with them. Either offer to go back and replay something we maybe done a couple times, or something new that we have just a scent of, but enough of a scent where we can kind of hop on that ride, as it were, and then watch, because the game, at least in terms of how I've experienced it, is that, other things will start clicking. In other words, it's like a ball that rolls downhill. The synchronicities will start piling up. And frequencies, for me, that are the most exciting, the ones on the edge, the one that are, maybe it's a very faint scent that I'm picking up, but that are going to carry me farthest. I rely on that. I mean, there's a sort of a faith or an understanding of it just enough, that I can let it take me somewhere and be changed by it.
Yeah, I agree, and I even think it's a little bit more than the issue of faith, because, like you said, if you have just enough understanding that this is actually how, let's use the word, the mechanism of existence works.
Yeah, it's not a faith issue at all.
Right, you just know that that's what's going to happen, in the same way that you know that, generally speaking, when you flip the light switch, the light will go on. It just does work that way, so you can rely on that.
So the frequency comes first. We're taking it from the more real into the illusion. The frequency first, and then it precipitates into what we experience as the waking dream, time, space, as a story, as a narrative, as events, but it's frequency first. I want to clarify some of this for myself and for our listeners. we're talking about frequency, and we're referring, of course, to energy states. And I'd like for you to unpack the energy conversation. What is it that we are referring to when we speak in this way about energy coming before the physical experience?
Well, we're talking about state of being. We're discussing from the perspective of the physical personality the idea that it's composed, in a sense, of different components, the primary one of which being beliefs and definitions. How we define our reality is generally how we experience our reality. And our overall energy state, our overall state of being, is usually determined by what we believe most strongly to be true. Whether that is a conscious belief or an unconscious belief doesn't much matter. It seems to be the determiner of the remainder of our personality components, which is our ability to feel emotion, our ability to think and behave and act in physical life, is all based on, all predicated on, first and foremost, what we have defined our reality and our relationship to reality to be. So state of being really determines the circumstances that we experience and gives us a chance to respond in a positive way or react in a negative way to those circumstances. And that response or reaction is usually based on something that we believe to be true, but also acts as a method of revealing to ourselves what we believe to be true based on how we either respond or react to the circumstance we've attracted with our state of being. So it's always a sort of perpetuating, self-reflecting, self-expanding mechanism that always gives us an opportunity to determine and readjust what our beliefs and definitions happen to be. But state of being is what sort of brings that about first.
So we are more really, if I follow you, a quantum soup, a quantum packet of energy information in formation.
Yes, always.
That we experience in this more densely compacted energy experience called life in the physical. We experience it as a physicality, as bodies and stuff and chairs and radio microphones. But more accurately, as we go down into the molecular states and the subatomic states. Eventually, there is the nothing states in between. We are more accurately vibratory experience.
Yeah, I think everything is resonance. Everything is consciousness and energy in vibration, and the experience is determined by the particular pitch or frequency of that collective packet of energy. That is actually what the difference is between one thing and another. It's a difference in frequency, much in the same way, by analogy, that the difference between red light and blue light, since it's all made of electromagnetic energy, is only the frequency of that energy.
I love it. And again, going back to the idea that we're the doorman, as it were, we're shifting or modulating at the being state, at the energetic level, and then watching things line up vis-a-vis our ability to do that. Again, for me, at some point, you guys nailed it, that at some point it was a leap of faith, and now it's more of understanding that as things are showing up, to the degree I'm really willing to look at them and recognize what's being expressed as a frequency, I have the ability to go, shift the frequency. I mean, I used to in the past, at the level of that frequency, try to clean up all the stuff that was going on, and in some ways, I could muddle through to where maybe I shifted frequency unbeknownst to me, or some leap of faith occurred and things started to clean up. But again, this level of the doorman, the observer, the ability to go, wow, okay, what's the frequency? And more important perhaps is shifting the frequency, so our state of being is going to start being reflected back in different experiences.
Changing the pitch.
The pitch.
And the key to changing that pitch is to discover and make conscious what the definition or belief is that's generating that particular frequency. Because only when you identify the actual definition that generates the frequency does it then become possible to change that definition and thus change the frequency.
So, Darryl, let's move the conversation to the end zone. So now we can expect some calls. and letters.
That's right. And comments.
There is a lot of enthusiasm around ideas of attraction and laws of attraction, and many of our friends are leaders in that conversation. And yet there really is nothing to attract, because there's nothing outside of ourselves. It is more accurately, as we're talking now, as I'm understanding you, it is more accurately a recognition of the pitch that we are at as the culminating soup of a variety of elements, including belief, as you said, and thought and choice and decision and action and feeling. It is the self-managing of that in order from the inside out to change the pitch, to lift the pitch, or to drop the pitch if we so wish. And that experience is really a signal to ourselves that we experience in this waking lucid dream.
I'm getting a signal.
So we're not
I'm
really...
I'm getting a signel. I'm getting a signal that
we got to go for a break. When we come
signal.
back from the break, we're going to pick this up and talk about whether we're really attracting or transmuting. But first, we are going to transmute to these words from our loyal sponsors.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
Thank you so much for staying with us on Cutting Edge Consciousness. So Darryl, back to you. We want you to unpack a little bit about this distinction about, is it really a matter of attracting anything from the outside to us, or is it more accurately a recognition of the pitch that we are operating on and from the inside out transmuting our experience?
I believe the latter, mechanistically speaking, although the experience of attracting things is how we interpret the idea in physical reality.
Beautiful.
But manifestation isn't really the idea of attracting something from the outside to us that isn't here, because there really is no outside per se. Even though we experience the idea as if there is, manifestation is really shifting the frequency to the point where what is already here but invisible becomes visible to us suddenly, and thus appears before us to our senses, but didn't really come from anywhere. It's been here all along. We just didn't perceive it because we weren't on the same frequency level as it.
So we experience an outside currently, most of us do anyway. We experience an inner and outer. We experience a duality, but it's clear that the direction of integration and the direction of the grand work of the moving of consciousness is the collapse of that, and that we begin to perceive and conceive of a veil dropping between the inner and the outer, that there is only one thing going on.
Yes, and I'd actually like to interject something else here on another level that in my channeling Bashar has talked about, and I'll use the word attract here just for a moment for convenience sake. But the whole idea of the law of attraction, again, isn't so much the idea of it is true in a sense you have to be on a certain frequency to, quote-unquote, attract a certain thing. But I think what people also don't remember or don't realize is that we are always exhibiting or always radiating a core frequency. We may wrap it in other frequencies, we may disguise it, but we are always radiating that core frequency.
You mean like a signature frequency?
A signature vibration that is uniquely our true selves.
And that's called essence sometimes, right? The essence.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, you can call it by any number of things.
Right. I call it Freeman.
Is the same thing, yeah. But the idea really is that anything that is truly representative of that vibration, and I'm just going to speak about this sort of euphemistically, is already doing its best to try and get to us, to try and manifest.
Oh, that's so good.
If it doesn't manifest, it's because we're keeping it away with a contrary frequency. It's not so much that we have to be a frequency that attracts it, it's that we have to just relax into the frequency that's already commensurate with that manifestation. The only reason we're not experiencing it is because we have beliefs and definitions and frequencies that are actually keeping it at bay. And conversely, anything that is not our frequency, again, just sort of poetically speaking, is doing its best to try and get away from us But the only reason the things that are not us stay around is because we hold on to them with beliefs. So it's not so much an issue of trying to attract or trying, in a sense, to push things away. It's an idea of letting in and letting go.
That's fantastic. And this element of determining the belief that's generating a particular experience. In other words, there is this way that we become very intimate with the frequencies that are, habituated and or hand-me-downs. I mean, hand-me-down is a bit of a misnomer because they're ours. I mean, however we got them, we signed up for it in some way. Mm-hmm. But the my sense is the very frequency of that way of relating in and of itself generates something. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, of course. It makes a difference. When you know it's possible to change a belief, that in and of itself makes it easier to change a belief.
Yes.
So at some point, the understanding of the prism by which we broke down our unity with the more of ourselves, the prism by which we splintered ourselves into an experience of separation for the sake of the experience. There comes a point when we are sufficiently, we are aware enough of the mechanism that there is even more mileage and traction to be gained out of developing relationships with the higher frequencies, integrated frequencies of the real self, the truer self. That is the joyride.
That's fascinating because this goes back to what you said earlier, Darryl, which is the relationship with the synchronicities. Because otherwise, a lot of us get caught in this mechanistic. We understand it mechanistically, but
we like the cause and effect trip.
Yeah, but if we're coming at it that way, that is a frequency, creates a whole nother game, as it were.
Yes. Yeah, every belief has a self-reinforcing frequency. So whatever you believe to be true, whatever you believe is possible or probable, brings with it more of that frequency, more probability, so to speak. If you believe things are less likely, then it brings that frequency and prevents you from even knowing that something else is possible.
And I'm talking really about softening the edges, which is, again, the frequency of the response. In simple terms, things like compassion. For me, compassion is an opening frequency. So to the degree I have compassion for something, it eases and it becomes, I think what you were saying, the easing in, then we're just playing with the synchronicities. We're like, it becomes more fun. That's my sense.
Yes, absolutely.
It's pretty triggering when you start lining up one synchronicity, another coincidence, and then have one bang, 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 3, 4 in a day. It takes a very, very present. You have to be very present with yourself, or I'll speak personally. I have to be very present with myself to handle that much joy and that much non-linear kinking in my love affair with the straight line.
Yeah, I think that's actually the bottom line for most people is the question of how much ecstasy can you believe you can handle.
Wow.
You really are an ecstatic being. That's
and we have a physical conditioning as well. We have so much biology and chemistry aligned to the experience of being separate from that ecstasy, that we don't have the neuronal connections, we don't have a glandular system, a nervous system that can take it. It has to be built up incrementally, ratios at a time. Is that right?
Usually, yes.
Usually, I like that. So, except when, Darryl?
Except when you allow for the possibility of the capability of instantaneous acceptance.
That's so great. That is so great because it really speaks to the malleable nature of this. Like, how powerful is the frequency of a belief? It is everything.
So it's ratios unless it's a quantum shift.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Again, this goes back to what I was saying about mechanizing it, I can speak personally, too, because that's actually when it's most applicable, is just my own capacities. So, for people listening to this show, forgive me if I'm kind of a broken record, but I keep checking in about my capacity.
People listening to this show have never seen records.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I was going to say, that's a generational thing.
Sorry. But I'm working on a capacity for intimacy in relation with my wife. I've been working on it for years now, right? And I've been my own guinea pig, and we've sort of described 2 years ago during the New Year's show how Jazz and I were going about increasing our capacity for intimacy. And this year we've gone to a kissing practice, which is testing me because I'm topping out in a particular way.
He didn't mean that, Jazz. No, she's listening.
No, I do mean it because she's aware of it. We're both aware of where we're hitting capacity, our edge, as it were. But I love the idea in an instant. We just changed the whole malleation to talk about the neural structure, neuronal structure, and go with a different storyline or a different frequency. Like it could pop in an instant just based on a shift or a click is how I've experienced it in my own life.
Yes, and actually I think the sort of interesting thing, the man behind the curtain in this whole concept for me is that we are actually shifting instantaneously all the time.
Right.
It's just that we suddenly realize we are, and then we experience the fact that the shifts are always instantaneous. It doesn't always appear that way because more often than not, based on our belief systems, the instantaneous shifts we're always creating just don't look that much different.
They're happening inside the bubble of our overarching story, so we're comfortable with it.
Yes, and so we don't create an appearance of that much of a change. We make it look like it's incremental, even though every single change is a total and complete change of everything.
Yeah,
I love that.
That's so good. Go ahead.
A great example of that, a really great example of that is, I mean, in the old days when we used to run film at 24, 25 frames per second through a projector, it looked like a continuity, it looked like a continuous flow, but in fact, there were quantum shifts from frame to frame, 24 to 25 times a second, and each frame was a discrete experience, and there was discontinuity in between.
Exactly.
We're doing that full time as a function of the frequency and amplitude of our signal.
Yes, billions of times per second, so quickly, so smoothly, we don't even realize.
Well, no wonder I'm frantic.
Why not? Who now knows? I love about this, too, is that technology as a mirror, because that's what it is mirroring these quantum shifts, because now we're like, frames per second, like a record? What are you talking about, like a broken record? What's that mean? There's a whole way in which, we can kind of we can let go of something that really as a paradigm is no longer required because this frequency that we're collectively experiencing doesn't include it. Like that was great. We did that. The mechanized, the frames were important at one point, and the process and the processing of the film and all that, not required anymore. We're digital. We don't do that anymore. Right? The technology's a mirror.
Everything is always a mirror of consciousness.
That's the trick, is to get past the mind loop that says we're separate from it, we're not a part of it, and into the higher truth that we are both separate and connected and the same as it, and to begin to develop a practice of relationship with it. That's the trick. So, Darryl, you got any little pearls you want to throw out, little hints on how we might further develop the capacity, further develop that relationship?
Well, anytime anyone expresses any kind of creative endeavor that evokes a reflection of a higher frequency, I think you're doing your best to infuse that into society. You're sending out, you're spreading out that energy. You're creating that bubble, that atmosphere that gives people a chance to sort of reflect on that vibration themselves. I think that's what art is really all about, of any type whatsoever. It is a mirror that evokes a frequency that people can lock onto, that also puts them in touch with more of who they truly are and allows them to then perhaps more easily shift in a way that is more reflective of their true selves and their creative expression.
That's brilliant. And I also, again, something we were talking about before that I think is worth looping in now is the self-organizing nature of a particular frequency. Because again, that whole idea of, Barnett and I have talked about this, various arenas, creativity, wherein we talk about the reservation or the construct, right? The way we've held things, the belief that holds a certain reality in place.
The socialized self.
Yeah, exactly. And so the popping off the reservation, for me as a capacity, can happen in the creative space. That's an arena where my limiting tendencies, the self-organizing reality that is often running the show, in the creative realm, I can go on that ride and it doesn't self-organize as much, at least. Does that make sense?
Yeah, or it organizes in a way that's just more in a flow with the true vibration.
More bandwidth.
So you don't notice the organization as much.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of creative flow, You are always flowing, and
up
you're
to
always
date.
creative. So just bring us a little up to date
Please.
about Dearly Departed, which is, for those of you who don't know, which is Darryl's film, his fictionalized documentary. It's a really wonderful conceit of how you did this, and I'll let you speak a little bit about it.
Yeah, I've been fascinated with the idea of reports from near-death experiences. I think one of the last frontiers of sort of breaking down the separation in things is between the idea of the physical and the non-physical spirit world, where it's just more than the idea of an end of life or an afterlife. It's just a continuation of life in a different form. And I think that a lot of the reports from near-death experiences sort of allude to this idea that we just continue in a different way.
So it's what Bruce Lipton said when he came on our show. Bruce Lipton, the scientist who, the epigenetics that created the whole, I'm sure you know, the biology of belief, and he talked about that. He was working with reincarnation and came to understand that we're just frequencies. That's how he described it.
Yeah, it's all simultaneous incarnation, each one representing a different frequency domain that coexists with this one. But the idea of the film, as you say, the conceit of it is we wanted to sort of get some of that information of the reports of near-death experiences describing, the spirit realm out there, but we didn't want to do it in sort of a typical documentary fashion. So we sort of asked ourselves the question, wouldn't it be cool if we could actually take a camera into the spirit realm and interview the spirits of people who once were with us in the physical realm and get their take, their insights on, their perspectives on that whole experience of crossing over. And so we said, well, why don't we just shoot it as if we did? And that's the way we did it. We hired actors, we wrote a script, and shot it as a fictional documentary, as if we were, in fact, interviewing spirits in the spirit world. And
it's very, very powerful
Thank you.
and very effective. And I loved it. I was a little disappointed because I didn't see my dog there. I was looking for him. But maybe in the sequel you can, if you really appreciate and love us and are loyal as a friend, maybe you could find Siri somewhere.
Yes, but we did do that, and now that is available on DVD on our website, ziafilms.com.
www.ziafilms.com, and you will also be able to find out more about that on the Cutting Edge Consciousness site as well.
Darryl, thank you so much for coming by. I get every time we have you here, we're like, we got to have you more often. It's just so much fun.
I love coming on your show, and anytime you want me on there, I'm happy to come on.
All right, my friend.
Thank you, guys.
All right, for those of you listening, stay tuned. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back to wrap up in just a minute.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with Barnet Bain. Just got done talking to Darryl Anka. Wow. Okay, so here's the piece that I'm still chewing on. I'm always chewing after we're done with him. It's
you need to swallow before you take another bite. Don't chew with your mouth full.
Please. The whole premise of this show, which has worked us, folks, we say it all the time. I'm
brutal. Every 4
it.
months we grab a grenade, we pull the pin, we blow up where we've been.
Which we call Darryl Anka. Like
we call Darryl Anka.
You want to explode this thing? We know
that's
to
right.
call.
Now you can't. Darryl comes on, and then we can't trail back to where we were.
No, that's a good point. But Bruce Lipton also blew this thing up. For those of you who liked what we just did, go check out the Bruce Lipton because he's off the hook too. Mm-hmm. But I want to go back to the fertile soil from a frequency perspective, where I don't have as much of a challenge personally popping off the reservation from a frequency game perspective.
Say that again.
Okay, I'm going to say it in simple terms.
Yeah.
When Darryl said, wouldn't it be cool? The whole creative conversation, that the creativity, and that is a frequency, the very nature of that frequency, if you really know how to follow it, we're not talking about structured imagination. We're not talking about a kind of creativity born out of that self-organizing frequency that keeps us safe. I'm talking about this really heartfelt, open-minded exploration. You know, the language, wouldn't it be cool? That frequency, like, wouldn't it be cool? The ability to imagine, to pop off and keep playing consciously at our own edge.
Mm-hmm. The what ifs.
Yeah, but not the what ifs like the hypotheticals where we're trailing back and keeping everything.
Not
in
the
place.
yeah buts.
Yeah buts. No, not that. The what ifs. The really popping off frequencies. So I just wanted to say that our premise.
There are frameworks, though.
Yeah.
I want to bring that up here to your point. There are frameworks that we put in place. They're like training wheels in the back of my two-wheeler, which one of these days I'm going to take off.
I'll be a big boy.
I'll be a big boy now. So there are training wheels. There are practices that allow us to develop this relationship with these purer and purer, more and more refined expressions of what if, so that the what if that you're talking about is not simply a what if inside what is known,
right,
which is very inventive, but then there is a creative innovation, an inventive innovation that is a gift from this relationship with, as Darryl was saying, the truer me, that I'm not in that I don't have the same kind of experience with, that is calling me back into the merging, into the oneness. As I develop that, there are gifts that come from that, and beyond that, there is even a creative, innovative, inventive state. There are all these sorts of layers, and they involve very practical foundations. For one, how many of us, again, I'll come back to me, how many times do I have to remind myself to set aside, to create time, and I mean that in the most literal sense of the word, literally, to create time. Because time does not exist unless I create it. To create time in order to create, either by journaling or by gardening or by pushing a relationship to greater depths of intimacy, or listening to music with a greater degree of participation.
Yes.
How often do I create the time to pursue with an intentionality, closeness, different kind of rapport with experience, with my life's experience? Even if it's as simple as I'm going to create the time to take a different route home from the grocery store.
And I'm going to throw the spotlight back at you. I don't usually do this, and I know sometimes it's uncomfortable. I'm doing it anyhow. Arenas wherein we can play at this higher frequency, creative endeavors, right? So when you made What Dreams May Come, that had not been done. At least the thread of thinking, where we're creating our own reality, and then the amazing, magical, for what you won an Academy Award, for what the film won an Academy Award, the whole way.
We just won again. I noticed the Academy Award that was just handed out, pretty much everybody on that team worked on our movie.
Yes, visual effects.
But we'll go back to you.
No, that's right. But the point is that, and one of the things too that I want to share with people as a process. So your wife was sharing this about this new film, one of the new films that you're working on. I know there's several, but that you found it in the music. You had this excited moment. You went, oh my God, I found it. Here, Sandy, you have to listen to this. This music, this is it. So the frequency of the music triggered, or you triggered, and then the music came in. I don't care which came first, chicken, egg, who cares?
It lifts you.
Yes. But
outside, it lifts you off the familiar. Then comes the challenge, the resistance. Oh no, it's unfamiliar. I want to track back to what's safe. Not in a creative impulse.
That's it.
Then you have to override that. So these things all involve becoming aware of the emotional states, and then aware of the mental states and the thinking that is an outgrowth of the emotional states that we use to push back against playing a bigger game.
That's it. And one of the practices in this arena is the wouldn't it be cool? The what ifs. And now we're playing synchronicity game. Now we just marvel at all the synchronicities. Like, we start doing a little bit of that what if stuff. Next thing you know, things are popping.
What if this will work out? That's the first thing you say. What if I was courageous enough to follow this? Yes. What if I follow this even though I don't know where it's going to lead? What if I'm willing to be wrong in the pursuit of something new?
Yeah.
What if I'm willing to be wrong in the pursuit of something that I think is right?
Yeah.
All of these are different calibrations of how we have handled life that are innovative in the sense that they are brand new experience for us and allow us to calibrate moment to moment to entirely new frequencies, to entirely new, that 24, 25 frames a second we were talking about.
Yeah.
Well, it looks the same all the time because it's always inside the same bandwidth. But if we do these sorts of practices, we increase the bandwidth, and slightly, ever so slightly at first, when we look very closely, and part of this practice is to pay attention to where it looks a little bit different, where it looks like there is some feedback, however small.
Yep.
There's some feedback. All of a sudden, could be the slightest little detail. When you pay attention to it and you endow it with meaning, even that is a virtuous loop of energy that feeds back and says, I endow it with meaning, therefore my subconscious gets the idea, more of this, bring on more of this.
That's it. And then you've got a good doorman. Because, look, I know the nature of one of my primary frequencies, my coping frequencies, my adaptive frequencies. It is self-organizing. It is. It's self-organizing towards comfort. It's self-organizing towards the illusion of certainty. And I know enough that that's not a great idea. I mean, you said, I don't know, 5 minutes ago, we get Darryl in here to throw a grenade in the middle of our comfort because we know that vibratory quality of where we get to pop off the reservation, and we know it isn't.
Well, here's how subversive this is.
The self-organizing tape loop?
The subtext of the Darryl conversation we just had.
Okay.
Here's how subversive it is.
Okay.
Underneath what he is saying, and we'll have him back to verify this for those who are skeptics. So,
we love those
underneath what he is saying is the communication that the doings of things in the world in order to have impact. I'll do this. These are strategies. Some people push back on the word strategies. The doings. They are effective, and we have been playing inside that game. They are effective to a particular level of frequency. There is another level of impact in the world that supersedes that.
Right.
That is another octave up the scale. That has to do with being states.
That's what he said, state of being.
The being state
Yep.
trumps the doing state.
Big time. And the
now
strategies.
there are different ratios of being and doing, and these are the spirited will and action that meets the feminine soul energy of imagining, connecting, being, and waits to be found by the spirited energy. It waits to be found and fulfilled. They work together. But the being state, when we operate in alignment with that being soul state, there's a whole different order of manifestation that happens, and it doesn't require, I'll do this, I'll take my action steps. Now, you don't get to bypass that, so we're not suggesting, well, maybe you do. I don't
because
know.
in the next moment,
Yes.
There's a click.
Maybe you do.
Can
I don't know.
acknowledge something here, which may seem a little odd, but I'm just doing it? I love when you click into the authority, and there's a number of little pieces that get put in place where you go, right, I know this frequency, and you hop on it. It's interesting because part of our work is to we know the I want to language this, but I don't want to get so languagey. Look, that self-organizing small story frequency that binds me to the reservation and has these really rigid walls that fence in my essence, right? That stuff is so insipid that it can seep into even areas where I've had the most juice in my life. Even in the most creative moments, it can come in and hijack the entire creative process, and I'm trying to get it right. and I'm trying to fit in. And that frequency is running, and like it's showing up with all kinds of resistance and limitation. And I'm like, oh God, I get it. This just thing, my whole amazing inspired moment got hijacked by that frequency, that self-organizing frequency that I'm always in relationship with. I'm not trying to kill it, right? Because again, what Darryl said about, that belief, how do I have a sense of that belief? I mean, I have to have a sense of it. I'm not going to bypass it, Then we're into faith. Then we got lucky.
Then we're into denial.
Yeah.
And then it's a luck story, and it's disempowering.
Yes, exactly.
It happened to me. You're back in the second story.
Exactly. But I just wanted to mark in this moment that I love when you go boom and you click in and we're off. I mean, that's the joy of what we do. A lot of times I listen back to our shows. I'm sure Darryl listens to him as Darryl, obviously him as Bashar. It's always like, wow, how did I get that? It's a download. It's a tap into a frequency, and it comes out and you go, wow. But the marveling at that, how many times do I marvel and go, how did we do that? Because there's no way I can, in that small story, figure out what that looks like. Mm-hmm. The only I can say is I know enough about practices, arenas, where I can create them and then just delight in the synchronicity and the crazy making that comes out. And you go, wow, who knew?
Well, they say where two or more.
Yeah.
And inside of the illusion, that is both true and not true at the same time, that we are separate. We are, in physical life, it's a world of duality. So we are true, both separate and connected simultaneously. So inside of that, the truism that by myself I can do nothing is absolutely true. And outside of that, we still don't have a direct experience to the more expanded parts of ourselves, and so they appear as other, and who knows, maybe they are other, I don't know. But the takeaway for me inside the by myself I can do nothing is that that means that every story is a love story.
Yeah.
And that feels like true north.
And that as a frequency is a great recalibration. Let me come back to this as a recalibration. Let me get the doorman in here and go, okay, we're swinging right, we're swinging left. Okay, let's recalibrate here. And everything's a love story. And what's showing up as a small story needs to be loved. And the moment it's loved, it transmutes and becomes a big offer, a big something I'm putting out in the world that
transmutes into, well, how can I overcome that?
Yeah.
And then eventually, that might be as far as it goes, and for some, it might be, is there more beyond that? And then there can be the legacy story of a destiny that's not out there, that happens to me, but it's self-chosen, that emerges out of an understanding, or the beginning, the glimmer of an understanding that I am separate and yet connected. And so what I do for self at some point begins to show up across the entire system. It shows up everywhere, and then my personal process transmutes into a global process.
That's it.
And then it's the big game of service.
That's it. All right, listen, we have served our time. And
this was fun.
Always.
Should we do it again next week?
We'll do it again next week.
We'll be here. We hope that you'll be here.
That's right. We invite you, of course, to join us on all the various places where we show up, Facebook and YouTube and anywhere else where you seem to find us. And keep coming back to Cutting Edge Consciousness.